It was dawn in a small, dusty village, the kind where hunger woke before the rooster's cry and dreams faded with the first light. A barefoot girl named Lina walked the cracked path between withered fields, her small basket swaying at her side, nearly empty, like her stomach. Each morning she searched for leftover grains the wind might have spared or a fruit that had fallen unseen. Her hands were rough, her eyes tired, yet there was something in her face, a quiet strength that hunger could not take. As the sun crept over the horizon, painting the sky in tired gold, Lina heard a faint sound, a soft broken chirp. She turned and saw a tiny movement in the tall grass near an old mango tree. Kneeling down, she found a baby bird, trembling, fragile, its wings too weak to move. It looked up at her with desperate eyes, too young to understand the cruelty of the world. Lina hesitated. She had nothing, not even enough to feed herself. But something inside her, that small voice that refuses to die even in the poorest of hearts, whispered, "Help it." She gently cupped the bird in her palms, feeling its heartbeat, a flutter of life clinging to hope. "Don't worry," she whispered, smiling softly. "I'll take care of you." She tore a piece from her torn scarf to wrap it and placed it in her basket, beside the few grains she had found. As she walked back, the wind carried her voice, a lullaby her mother once sang before the famine took her away. No one saw that moment. No one cheered or thanked her, but the universe did. Because that small act of kindness, a starving girl saving a weaker soul, set in motion a chain of miracles that would one day make her name known far beyond her village. And though she didn't know it yet, that little bird would not only heal its wings, it would one day teach Lina to fly. Lina lived with her grandmother in a small mud hut at the edge of the village, a home that creaked with every breeze and leaked with every storm. Its walls were patched with old cloth, its roof held together by faith more than straw. Her parents had died when she was little, victims of a sickness that came and left like a shadow in the night. Since then, her grandmother had done everything to keep them both alive, gathering herbs from the forest, washing clothes for the rich farmers, and praying the sky would remember their names. The villagers pitied them from a distance. Some offered leftover food, others mocked, "Kindness won't fill an empty stomach." But Lina never argued, never complained. She would smile, a tired, quiet smile, and whisper, "Maybe not today, but one day kindness will return." Each evening, after finishing her chores, Lina sat by the window's cracked frame, watching the horizon glow red. It reminded her of her mother's stories, of hope, of miracles, of how even the poorest soil can grow flowers if watered with love. When she found the baby bird that morning, something inside her felt alive again. She took a small clay pot, lined it with cotton from an old pillow, and placed the bird gently inside. It chirped weakly, its tiny beak opening for food. Lina broke a few grains, soaked them in water, and fed them one by one. Her hands trembled, but her eyes were steady, as if this small act was the only thing keeping her heart from breaking. Her grandmother watched from the doorway, smiling faintly. "You can't even feed yourself," she said softly, "and yet you feed another life." Lina looked up and replied, "If I don't help it, it will die. And if I do, maybe we both will live a little longer." The old woman chuckled, not out of mockery, but pride. "The heavens are watching, child," she murmured. "They always watch those who give with empty hands." Days passed. The bird grew stronger. It began to flutter, testing its wings. And though Lina's stomach still ached from hunger, her heart felt full. She didn't realize it yet, but that small clay pot in their broken hut had become a cradle of hope. A place where two souls, one human, one bird, were teaching each other the true meaning of survival. Days turned into weeks, and the tiny creature that once trembled in Lina's hands began to change. The baby bird, whom she lovingly named Chotu, grew feathers the color of dusk, soft brown with glimmers of gold when touched by the sun. Every dawn before the roosters crowed, Chotu would hop onto Lina's shoulder and chirp a melody that sounded almost like laughter. Together they walked through the misty fields. Lina with her empty basket, Chotu balancing proudly, wings half open as if guarding her. When Lina bent to pick fallen grains or gather firewood, the bird pecked gently at her braid, as though urging her to smile. For a girl who had lost so much, Chotu had become more than a bird. He was a reason to wake up, a heartbeat that reminded her she wasn't alone. But the village saw it differently. Children laughed from afar. "Look, the beggar girl talks to birds now." Women shook their heads. "She's wasting her time on something that can't even feed her." Men muttered, "Useless dreams won't fill a pot." Lina didn't answer. She had grown used to the cruelty of words. She simply smiled, pressed her cheek against Chotu's feathers, and whispered, "Let them talk. They don't understand us." At night, under a leaking roof, she sang to him, old lullabies her mother once sang when the world still felt kind. Her voice was soft, trembling, but beautiful. And each time she sang, the bird chirped back as though keeping rhythm. Unbeknownst to Lina, her song didn't stay within the walls of her hut. Sound traveled, carried by the night wind, past the Gao fields and into the small nearby town where a traveling musician happened to be staying. One evening he paused while tuning his sitar, hearing something faint yet haunting, a voice, fragile but filled with soul. He followed it down the hill but found nothing except the distant glow of a village lantern. Still, he couldn't forget the melody. "Whoever that voice belongs to," he murmured, "it carries the kind of pain only truth can teach." Meanwhile, Lina continued to live her quiet life. Each morning she fed Chotu before herself. Each evening, she thanked the heavens for one more day of his song. Her grandmother often watched from the doorway, eyes glistening. "You care for him like he's your own child," she said one night. Lina smiled faintly. "He reminds me that love doesn't need riches, Nani. Just a little faith, and a small heart willing to share." Under the moonlight, the bird fluttered his wings, singing as if in agreement. In that moment, a hungry girl, a fragile bird, and an old woman formed a family built not on blood or comfort, but on kindness. What none of them knew was that fate had already begun to stir, quietly, gently, ready to turn Lina's simple act of love into a story that would travel far beyond their little village. It was a golden afternoon when fate decided to visit, quietly without warning. Lina sat by the river washing clothes and humming a soft tune to keep herself company. Beside her, Chotu danced on the edge of a rock, fluttering his wings in rhythm. The melody floated through the warm air, gentle, hopeful, and hauntingly pure. Down the dirt road, a trader's cart rattled by, its wheels creaking, carrying colorful fabrics and small brass pots that gleamed in the sunlight. As the cart passed, Chotu suddenly soared up, circling above it before landing right on top of a sack of grains. The trader gasped, "Hey, shoo, get off!" But then, from across the river, he heard a voice, clear as the wind and soft as water. "Chotu, come back." He froze. The sound wasn't just a call. It was a song, a melody that seemed to speak directly to the heart, pulling him toward its source. The trader looked across the river and saw a barefoot girl standing in the shallows, sunlight in her hair, her hand outstretched to the bird. Her voice carried emotion, longing, warmth, and something deeper, something real. The bird, as if obeying an ancient promise, flew back to her shoulder. The trader could only whisper, "That voice, it's like the earth itself is singing." He turned his cart around and followed the sound through narrow lanes until he reached a small hut at the village edge. An old woman sat outside, sorting herbs. "Mother," he asked respectfully, "that girl by the river, is she your kin?" The grandmother smiled faintly. "Yes, she's my granddaughter Lina, the one who still believes in dreams." "She sings often?" The trader pressed eagerly. The old woman's eyes softened. "No, she doesn't sing for people. She sings for life, for the bird she saved, for the hope she refuses to let die." The trader's heart stirred. He introduced himself, a messenger for a traveling troupe of musicians and performers who moved from town to town, searching for rare voices hidden in forgotten corners. "I've heard hundreds of singers," he said, "but never one whose voice carries both hunger and heaven. Your granddaughter's song deserves to be heard." That evening, as the orange sun sank behind the trees, the trader spoke to Lina herself. He offered her a place in the upcoming town fair music festival, promising she'd have the chance to sing before hundreds. For a long moment, Lina said nothing. She looked at her worn dress, her calloused hands, then at Chotu resting peacefully beside her. Finally, she whispered, "I have nothing to give but my song. If that's enough, then I'll go." Word spread quickly through the village. Some laughed. "A poor girl singing for city folk? She'll embarrass us all." Others sneered. "Dreams don't fill stomachs." Lina listened in silence, her eyes calm. Then she smiled and said softly, "If a bird with broken wings can fly again, why can't I?" That night, as the stars shimmered above, Lina packed her small bundle, a few clothes, her grandmother's blessings, and a promise whispered, "I'll always sing for the ones who still believe." And with that, the girl who once searched for grains beneath the sun began her journey toward a destiny waiting to hear her voice. The town fair glowed like a dream. Lanterns hung from every pole, music filled the air, and laughter rippled through the crowd. For Lina, it felt like stepping into another world, one brighter and louder than she had ever known. Backstage, she held Chotu close to her chest.
"Stay with me," she whispered.
"You're my courage." The bird chirped softly as if answering, "Always." When her name was called, Lina stepped onto the stage. Her bare feet touched the smooth wooden floor. Her eyes scanned the sea of faces. Strangers waiting, lights blazing. Her heart pounded like a drum inside her chest. The host smiled. "Our next performer, Lina from the mountain village." A hush fell. She stood in the middle of the stage, trembling but unbroken. Then, as the first note of music began, she closed her eyes and sang. At first, her voice was quiet, fragile like a whisper carried by the wind. But slowly it grew stronger, soaring higher with each word. It wasn't just a song, it was her story. The song spoke of hunger and hope, of finding light in darkness, of kindness returning like morning after a long night. It carried the sound of her village, her grandmother's laughter, and the small heartbeat of a bird she once saved as she sang. Chotu fluttered into the air, circling above her like a living symbol of freedom. The audience watched in awe, a girl and a bird, bound by faith and melody. By the final verse, even the music stopped and only her voice remained, echoing through the night like a prayer. When the last note faded, silence hung in the air. Then, slowly, the crowd rose, clapping, cheering, shouting her name. Lina opened her eyes, stunned. Tears streamed down her cheeks. For the first time in her life, the world had truly listened. Among the audience, a man in a white suit stood motionless. His eyes glistened, a renowned musician known across cities for discovering rare voices. He walked toward her as the applause thundered. "You have a gift," he said gently, "not just a voice, a soul that sings. Let me help you share it with the world." Lina could barely speak. She looked at Chotu, then at the musician, and nodded. "If my voice can feed hearts the way hope fed me, then I'll sing for everyone." From that day, Lina's journey began anew. The man became her mentor, guiding her through the world of music, helping her study, record, and perform. She sang on bigger stages in brighter lights, but her songs never lost their roots. Every melody carried a piece of the village, every word a memory of struggle and kindness, and wherever she went, Chotu perched on her shoulder, a small faithful reminder of the day a hungry girl found a broken bird, and in saving him, found her wings. The train rolled into the quiet mountain village after years, its whistle echoing through the same fields where a barefoot girl once searched for grain. But this time it wasn't hunger that arrived. It was a name whispered across cities, radios, and hearts: Lina. As she stepped down, villagers gathered at the station, murmuring in disbelief. The same people who had once turned away from her poverty now watched in awe. She looked no different, her eyes still gentle, her smile still humble, but something radiant surrounded her. like sunlight following wherever she walked. In her hands, she carried two things, a microphone wrapped in silk and a small golden cage, open and empty, a tribute to Chotu, the bird who had once taught her courage. The dusty lanes that had once echoed with taunts were now filled with garlands and music. Children ran barefoot beside her car, shouting, "Lina Didi! Lina Didi has come home!" Her grandmother, now frail but bright-eyed, stood at the door of their old hut, which had been repaired and painted anew. When she saw Lina, she broke down, her hands trembling as she touched her granddaughter's face. "My little bird," she whispered through tears. "You gave wings to your kindness, and it flew back with blessings." Lina knelt before her, holding her hands. "Everything I am," she said softly, "is because you taught me to give, even when we had nothing." That evening, the whole village gathered by the old mango tree, the same place where Lina once found Chotu trembling in the grass. Lanterns hung from its branches. The air smelled of flowers and rain-soaked earth. Standing on a small wooden stage, Lina spoke to her people. "When I left this village," she began, "I carried hunger in my stomach and hope in my heart. I never imagined the songs I sang to survive would one day help others live." The crowd listened in silence, eyes glistening. Behind her, workers unveiled a marble plaque. Lina's School of Music and Hope, built on the same land where she had once sung alone to the wind. Reporters took photos, microphones flashing as one journalist asked, "Lina, what do you credit your success to? Was it talent, luck?" She smiled, eyes glancing toward the open cage resting near the stage. "No," she said gently. "My teacher had feathers. He taught me to fly before I even knew I could." The villagers gasped softly, some with tears, some with smiles. Even those who once mocked her now bowed their heads. Whispering apologies, the wind carried away. As the night deepened, Lina sang once more, the same lullaby she used to hum while feeding Chotu. Her voice flowed through the village like a blessing, weaving through the trees, the rooftops, and the hearts of everyone listening. And as her song ended, a flock of birds soared across the moonlit sky, as if the heavens themselves had come to listen. For the first time, the village that once looked down on her now looked up, to the girl who had taught them that kindness, when given freely, always finds its way home. At sunset, golden light spilled across the village, soft, warm, and tender, like a memory made of sunlight. Lina sat beneath the old mango tree, the same tree where everything began. The air was still, filled only with the rustling of leaves and the distant laughter of children from her music school. Beside her sat Chotu, feathers now gray, movements slow. The little bird that once taught her courage now nestled quietly in her lap, eyes half closed. Lina stroked him gently, humming the same lullaby she used to sing when he was a fragile chick fighting to survive. Her voice was softer now, not the voice of fame, but of gratitude. As the sun dipped lower, Chotu let out a faint chirp, one final note, and then peacefully closed his eyes. Lina froze for a moment, then smiled through her tears. "You already gave me everything," she whispered, placing her hand over his tiny heart. The wind picked up, carrying fallen mango leaves into the glowing air. She lifted the small bird in her palms, then opened them, letting his spirit rise toward the orange horizon. The camera pans upward, following her gaze. Across the sky, hundreds of golden birds soar together in formation, wings shining against the sunset, a symbol of freedom, love, and the lives her kindness had touched. Sometimes, the smallest life we save becomes the reason we rise. As her words echo, the final shot fades to the school's gate, where a carved wooden sign reads, "Lina's School of Music and Hope, where wings are born." Children's laughter fills the background. A new girl, barefoot and curious, looks up at the birds, smiling, just as Lina once did.